Hi everyone, welcome to A-Level English Language. I'll be walking you through the A-Level English Language syllabus, a brief overview of the topics covered including some of the terminology. First of all, A-Level Language represents quite a departure from GCSE language in that it looks into modern spoken communication as well as written texts. This is something that resonates with a lot of young people in that they start to analyse the way in which they and their peers talk, how celebrities in the media talk, our accents and the way we modify them according to who we're talking to and our awareness of social status. So as regards written texts like GCSE, we talk about the methods used by a writer and we look at lexis. So first of all, the course comprises a range of things. In written mode, we talk about articles and blogs and digital texts. But as I say, we also talk about spoken mode. We might talk about how people interrupt, how people listen, how people converge to the way the other person is speaking, or how people diverge from the way they're speaking. I assess my students through essays and quizzes and just the odd spot check. Usually their students complete their work within about a week's turnaround time. They can also draw from a bank of online resources. We have Moodle and all resources are uploaded to this Moodle resource. Once or twice a year we go on a trip. Last year we went to the British Library. We did a survey on English language change and we looked at how grandparents' generation spoke compared to parents' generation and then current generation. And on our visit to the British Library, we also looked at ancient texts and how language has changed. So that was quite an interesting part of the course. It's particularly useful if you're considering a career in journalism. Some people go on to do speech therapy. Reading University, just down the road, they offer a fantastic course to do with English language and speech and linguistics. But maybe a student is more interested in the media. A-Level Language covers all of these things and prepares students for all these things. So what they need to buy before the course is two things really. One is the English language textbook, which prepares you for both AS level and A level. The students will not be sitting the AS level exam. They'll be doing internal exams after their first year, but naturally they will be doing their A2 exams. But this textbook covers the two. And also there's an ebook, Mr. Bruff's A-Level Guide to English Language, which is a fantastic resource, so I'd really recommend getting both of those. The textbook we'll be using in class and Mr. Bruff is really for reference, but very, very clear for learners. I think it's about just under £5 for an ebook. So just talking about the spoken mode of the course then, we talk a little bit about social stereotypes and how people speak. Do people make assumptions if they hear someone with an Essex accent or a received pronunciation accent, which is the kind that a lot of newsreaders use and the odd teacher even. And we talk about our assumptions about people's social status due to accent. And we also talk about how people modify their speech depending on how they see themselves socially. And some people actually downwardly converge, like George Osborne in Cameron's government. He was addressing a group of Morrison's staff and he downwardly converged. The Queen is sounding less plummy these days, put it that way. So we look at how she used to speak and how she now speaks. So she wants to be closer to the people, more accessible through her language. And what about women? Do they interrupt more than men or men interrupt more than women? Well, your son or daughter will find out during the course. We also do written mode. Paper 1 of the A-level paper is about written language, and students will analyse an article, maybe one that's taken from 100 years ago and one that is current on the same theme. So for example, last year it was on vegetarianism 100 years ago and veganism in 2019. So we look at how language has changed again, but we also look at how groups are represented. So with coronavirus going on at the moment, how are groups represented there? With the Black Lives Matter movement, how are groups represented there? So we look at headlines, we look at emotive language, factual language, and so on. Students find that pretty engaging, and I get them to write something themselves. They all write one article, usually 2, in the course of the year, and these are assessed. Article writing is part of the A2 exam, so it's an important component of the course. We look at the 7 frameworks. So I was doing this with my students yesterday, my A1s. So we're looking at a text in terms of the lexis, that's the vocabulary used. Pragmatics is an interesting one. This is where it's the gap between what is said and what is actually perceived by the listener. So if I say we'll kick off at 1, I might say we're starting the meeting at 1, but it's a bad example, but somebody might understand kick-off as being a sporting reference. So pragmatics is looking at the clarity of the message. Semantics, on the other hand, is to do with meaning. Grammar, we'll be looking at word classes, verbs, adjectives, clauses. Graphology, I think, is quite interesting for young people because it's all about the font, the layout, and the layout, and the general images. That's right, the images of any kind of text. So that's central to any message, really. So that's quite an interesting one. Phonology, we do phonetics, we look at IPA, the phonemic script, but we just also look at the sounds of words. So it's alliteration, onomatopoeia, all common things from GCSE. And discourse, it's any text or spoken dialogue is discourse. That's an umbrella term. But those are the 7 frameworks that we study. There's 20% of the course is the NEA, the non-examined assessment, the coursework, and students do it on anything that interests them. So some of my students this year, they're doing a study on the language of rap music. Others are doing male versus female speech. Do men seek to dominate? Do women seek to accommodate? Or has that changed? There are lots of studies and theories that support this theory, but now in 2020, have things changed? Some people are doing it on our perceptions of accent, or L1, L2 learners. Does your first language interfere with your second language? Many of our students are multilingual, so they like to study that sort of thing, bringing up a bit bilingual child. And also the effect of multiculturalism on the English language. We have many, many borrowed languages, language words from languages as diverse as Punjabi and Italian. We just don't realize it, I think. But that's also a popular topic of study. Okay, so this summer, if your son or daughter is interested in enrolling for English language, I'd love to have them. My name is Audrey Renton, I should have said that at the beginning, and I run A1 language and A2 language. So if your son or daughter is interested in enrolling with us, then I'd very much like them to look at the following assignments: reading an article on how English became English, so language change. David Crystal is a very inspiring person to do with World English. He's written the Encyclopedia of the English Language. If you can get hold of that, that's, for me personally, it's very engaging reading. There's a very good podcast on the BBC called The Battle for English. I can highly recommend that. And then there's a website. Stephen Fry, a great proponent of the English language. That's another podcast. And then any kind of research into accents or language and gender, or looking at London English, Paul Kurzweil's interesting website. All of those will actually interest your child, I think, your son or your daughter in doing English language. That's giving us a flavour of what is to come. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.